How
Yeah.
are you?
Good. How are you?
Are you at the restaurant right now?
I am.
Cool. We're both in our Niner gear.
Yeah, we got to represent.
Represent.
This
So
actually,
welcome.
we filmed a little thing for, I think it's KPIX Channel 5 this
Okay.
morning for with our drink collaboration with the Portuguese
I
artist
saw
Rita
that.
Oak and Gold Bar Whiskey. So they came out and did a little thing. So I think it's going to be on the news like Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So welcome to the show. I've been wanting you
Well,
on the show for a long time, and I think that a lot of people wanted you on the show as well. They kept asking me like, "Are you ever gonna have Telmo on?" And I'm like, "I want to, just not yet."
yeah.
I
It's
wanted
nice.
to
It's
kind
nice
of.
to feel wanted.
Of course. I mean, I think everybody loves you, and I've never heard any bad thing about you ever. I don't feel like
You
we've
haven't
ever
spoke to
crossed
any of my
paths.
exes.
I feel like we haven't really like crossed paths. Like you and I never sat down and had a conversation. We just know
No.
people that know each other, and we know we kind of mix within the community in our kind of like generation.
Yeah, which is weird because I learned like you worked in the city for a while, and I've been here since to the end of 2008. So I'm surprised we didn't cross paths at some point.
You know what sucks is that I've been in your restaurant at least 2 to 4 times getting just gift certificates, and I never sat down and ate. And then Angela and David have their father nights at your restaurant, and they scare me because they're like, "Just know if you go, you're gonna sing a song, so you better have something prepared." So I'm like, "I'm scared to go."
Well,
I
thank you for buying gift certificates. I appreciate it.
But I know I want to go. It's just so much harder getting into the city when you get out of the city. When like your life is not in the
I
city
know.
anymore and you step away from it, it's just so much harder to go back into the city.
I mean, I'm like one exit away from Daly City at this point. So anytime somebody's like, "Do you want to like meet us in like the Marina or North Beach?" I'm like, "That's like as far as San Jose almost. Like it's literally like half an
Yeah.
hour."
Is that like your hangout area, more North Beach and stuff?
No, not really, but I have friends there and stuff. So sometimes people are like, "Oh, we're gonna go over here. Do you want to meet up?" I'm like, "That's so far away. I don't." It's literally like it literally takes me as long to go from my house to North Beach as it does from my house to San Jose almost. Because I'm right by the
You guys
freeways.
go out there.
Well, because I have the restaurant, so I'm always running errands and doing things. So I have my car that I'm always like needing to like pick something up or to have it handy. I used to actually. I never used it much. When I first moved into the city, I bought a scooter, so I had a scooter for a long
Yeah.
time, and that was
Yeah.
like the best, most fun thing ever. Yeah. But it's great in the city because you could just like pull up anywhere, always find parking. You're just driving streets, not the freeway. So it's like super, it was super great.
Well, let me introduce you for people that are just listening. Um, welcome, Telmo Faria. You guys all know him for being a chef and having a restaurant, umacasa restaurant. But I don't want to just focus on umacasa. I think that a lot of people don't know you on a personal level and that you have other talents, not just food. Where did you grow up? Where are you from? Where are your parents from? How did it tell them start off?
So my parents are immigrants from the Azores. They actually came here at a younger age. I know some people's first generation born here, their parents came here a little bit older. My mom was like 5 and my dad was like 15.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But actually, my parents met here. And I was born here, but when I was a year old, my mom was from Saint George, my dad was from Fayal. But when I was a year old, my parents actually decided to move back.
Yeah.
So they moved back to Fayal, and I was raised in Fayal. It was like 5 years, and then came back here for a couple years, and then went back. But pretty much from when I was 1 till I was almost 13, I pretty much spent most of my childhood in Fayal.
You don't have an accent at all with your English.
Because my mom, because my mom when she I'd have to do the math, but I think my mom had me. My dad was in his 30s. My mom was in her late 20s. My mom came here when she was 5. So she was, she spoke English very well. My dad actually spoke English very well. So when they moved back to Fayal, they only spoke English to me in the house. because they knew outside of the
Mm,
house everybody would speak to me in Portuguese. So I
yeah.
actually don't know. I don't necessarily have like a first language, and I don't remember speaking one language before another. So I've always spoken Portuguese and English.
Okay, I have a question then. So when you're speaking to people, are you
Yeah.
thinking in Portuguese or English? Or does it just not even, it's
It
just like
actually
one
depends.
language?
It depends who I'm speaking to, and I'm fluent in Spanish as well. And for a long time, I spoke Spanish, but I wasn't fluent in Spanish. And the moment I realized that I was like fluent in Spanish was when I realized that I was speaking in Spanish and not translating in my head, if that makes sense. So
Mm,
basically, same thing. If I'm speaking to somebody, if I'm in Portugal or somebody's Portuguese here. Um, then I speak Portuguese and I don't think about it. Most of my daily life is in English. Same thing with Spanish. But, I will say that when I'm speaking to like a native Portuguese speaker, I'm a lot more inclined to like speak Portuguese. Sometimes, I get people that like want to speak in Portuguese but aren't that fluent of Portuguese speakers. And because I kind of realize that I guess subconsciously, like I end up reverting to like English in the conversation.
mhm.
But when I'm like
Yeah.
in Portugal, speaking just Portuguese to people and having a conversation, then I'm literally just thinking in Portuguese.
I learned Portuguese first, I think, baby wise, and then got into English pretty quickly because I'm the youngest. But I feel like when I go to Portugal, it takes me like a week or two to fully get the rhythm of speaking in Portuguese like that and not thinking so hard about it. So for you, you just can go to Portugal and have no freaking problems.
Yeah, and I'm pretty fortunate actually. For a long time, my Portuguese was kind of slowly disintegrating, not disintegrating, but
Yeah,
just like slowly. And because I was speaking English, and then I was executive chef of a Mexican restaurant group with mostly Hispanic staff. And I was traveling to Mexico pretty often, so like my Spanish had gotten really good. So like my Portuguese was actually like falling, was like probably at that point like my third strongest language. But since I
yeah.
started in the process of umacasa and being here and traveling to Portugal more, having more conversations in Portuguese, interacting in Portuguese more, my Portuguese has come back, and I feel like actually really like confident in my Portuguese. The one thing that's never really changed is like my reading and writing, because I was very fortunate. I went to school in the Azores, and then when I came here, I basically went to school in the Azores. Like fifth and sixth grade, fifth to sixth grade was my last grade that I actually went to school there. I came here seventh and eighth grade, I didn't have any Portuguese. But then in ninth grade in high school, I went to San Jose High, and I was able to do Portuguese for 4 years with Mr. Da Silva. So that always gave me like a really strong foundation of like reading and writing. It was
Yeah.
just like, vocabulary and, like you said, the rhythm and the vocabulary and just the confidence. It's kind of like a use it or lose it type thing, because like
Mm-hmm.
I studied 2 years of French when I was in Portugal, and I learned some French, and I can like speak a little bit of it, but I had so much more command of it, but I didn't have any regular contact with any
Yeah.
French speaking people. So it really is, so I'm like back to like such basics. So I think it's just a matter of like, if I'm in Portugal for like a month, I was
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be there for a month this last summer. By the end of the month, I was just like, my Portuguese was just like, as to where the
Yeah.
first couple days that I got there, it's like you said, I had to
To like
like be
warm
like,
up.
okay, I'm thinking in Portuguese now.
I'm
Yeah.
here. Yeah, it's so interesting to know a different language because you always get that question like, do you think in Portuguese? Do you think in English? I'm like, I don't know. I just do. It's just part of my identity. I don't know. It just
I
is
had
what it is.
I
Like,
have a friend that's like, I think in Portuguese when I'm like mexericar, because I always revert to when I'm having my
yeah,
machirich, I think in Portuguese. I'm like, oh yeah, because you're so used to like being in like a like American speaking environment, and that being like your like code language.
yeah. Like honestly, getting mad in English sucks. Getting mad in Portuguese, oh, it feels so good. Like yelling in Portuguese, oh, you really get it out, like you
Yeah,
really
that
get it out,
explains
the
most of
anger
our
out.
childhoods, I suppose. It must be like getting angry in Portuguese is that much more fun.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like the words are more elongated, the expressions, the tone.
So
So,
my grandfather, that's funny, but my grandfather, he was from my grandfather's actually not from the Azores. My dad's dad, he's from Continente, he's from Famalicão, and he was like a really proper. He was he was joined the army at a young age, and he was very loving in his own way, and but he was just a very like proper man. And I
yeah.
remember like his big cuss word was he'd be like orabolish, orabolish, and he'd get mad and like say orabolish. And I'd be like, that's
Oh
like,
my gosh.
and I
It's
and
so,
I'd be like, that's the most like PG like cuss word ever.
I remember when like I first said like the word caralho, I was like, it is like saying fuck, right? Like it's
Yeah,
equivalent to that. It
yeah.
felt really good too.
Man, I wasn't even allowed to say like to
No.
my dad. I'd have to be like everything was like senor. One time I was like he like said something from another room and I was like kek tu kedge and he like came in the room like popped in. Yeah, so if my dad was like Telmo, I'd be like senor or sim senor or like so one time I don't know I was distracted it was like and I was like a teenager and this was actually I think probably when I was like visiting him shortly after I had moved back because my folks split up and he stayed there and he said something and I was like okay tu kedge and he like popped up like a ninja and he was like do I was like he's like when did I stop being your dad and I was like okay my
Yeah. Yeah, like it's very like self-respect, man.
yeah, he's like we no one knows na escola juntos, and I was like, okay,
Yeah, I feel like my background with Portuguese language is so laid back because of the Lenjanu background. They're just so much like less proper being from the mainland,
yeah,
So I didn't realize the like proper like to like could be offensive. And I remember my dad teaching me that. Like when I started getting more into the community, like how to address people, like that people can get really offended by that, especially your elders. I'm like, what?
yeah.
There's just so
Well,
much to it.
that's
Like
the thing.
learning the
Like you
language
know,
is
you
one
always
thing, but like the etiquette is also another.
well, that's the thing. It's like you know when you also like when you're Portuguese and you go play with your friends. When I was in the Azores, it'd be like you know two back and forth all day. But then you have to be like you know when it was like oh people are older than us, o senhora, senhora, or even versus the two would be like você you know
Yeah.
so you know so just you know navigating that etiquette of kind of what was it like kind of situational Portuguese
Yeah.
speaking.
So for anyone out there, just go with senhora, senhora, or a gente if you don't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, oh você.
Você, yeah. So you're 13 and you came back to the States, and then that was it. You were here. I mean, besides vacationing and stuff, you were here after you were 13 years old.
Yeah, so I basically came back here, lived in basically in Santa Clara for a short time. When I came back here seventh grade. um, I had basically started seventh grade. So it was let me see, it was summer of so it was after the summer. So I was almost 13 and I started seventh grade. I went to Booksir Middle School in Santa Clara for a year, and then I went to Hoover Middle School for eighth grade. Um, and then yeah, and then my mom we moved from Santa Clara to San Jose, right by San Jose High School, and I went to San Jose High, and then was basically there up until 2004. Then I was in San Francisco all of 2004 for culinary school. After culinary school, I got a job at La Salette, my first
Oh,
real like
really?
restaurant job, and
That's
yeah, so I spent
cool.
3 years. I spent 3 years at La Salette in Sonoma because I always knew I wanted to cook Portuguese food, and I always had this vision for like Portuguese food because I grew up right. like my mom's house was basically half a block away from where Sousa's used to be, where Adega was, and now Petishkush. They just switched over to
Uh-huh.
Petishkush there. So I always enjoyed it, but I always had this idea of like, oh, I want to do, because I was like always into food. And when we moved back when I was 13 years old, like, kids would be watching like MTV and ESPN, and I'd be watching like Food Network. So like,
So in
yeah,
your
my dad had,
DNA.
well, not in the plan, but I just love food. My dad had a restaurant in Portugal, and I got to spend some time with him there at the restaurant. My grandfather cooked, my dad cooked. So actually, like a lot of the men, my padrine in Half Moon Bay, he's the one that cooks all the chipinos and the fish
Hmm.
fries, and so a lot of the men in my family cooked. So
Cool.
I was always around it. So it wasn't ever like this like, I don't know. I guess some people like grew up in households where it was primarily like the the wife's job or the women's job and stuff like. And in my family, there was never this like, oh, like the guy men don't belong in the kitchen or vice versa. You know what I mean? It's just like everybody cooked, but especially like my grandfather was a great cook, my padrino was a great cook, my dad was a great cook. So I always loved food. So when I came back here and everybody's like watching like MTV and watching like ESPN or Nickelodeon or whatever, like I'd be watching like Essence of Emerald and like all like Mario Batali and all these like early
Yeah.
like Food Network shows, Bobby Flay and whatnot, and I was always super interested. So actually, when I was 16 years old, through the Portuguese club at San Jose High, there was a mentorship program, and I used to go. I wanted to be a chef. So I used to go to Sousa's restaurant with So Lionel Sousa, who was the chef and owner. I would go there on Wednesdays to do like this mentorship program, and for like the first month, the first 4 Wednesdays, he would just have me peel onions and potatoes and like spend like 2 hours. The whole 2 or 3 hours whenever I was there, being like, you don't want to be a chef, you don't want to do this. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. Do you enjoy this? Like, no, like you don't. So like, and then finally I just kept coming back, and then like after that he was like, like, you really like this? And I was like, yeah, that's why I keep showing up and peeling
Aw.
potatoes every week. Like, I like this. So he was
Yeah.
like he started showing me more things and everything, and then so I did that. So long story short, yeah, I went to culinary school always with the idea that one day I wanted to cook Portuguese food in a more contemporary way, in a way that you would see these like French chefs or Italian chefs, elevate, kind of more more kind of like typical cuisine, and give it more modern presentation. So when I went to culinary school, my idea was always like, I'll do culinary school and I'll go to Portugal and I'll find like whatever there in like a contemporary restaurant in Lisbon and kind of learn. But then I came across and I learned about La Salette, and Chef Manuel Azevedo was in Sonoma already doing like this Portuguese food, but he had been classically trained under this like Swiss German chef, so he was applying a lot of like classical French technique and stuff, a little like wine country influence, some seasonality into like traditional Portuguese food. And I thought it was really cool. So I did my externship there for 3 months. And then at the end of it, he offered me a job, and I ended up becoming sous chef there, and staying there for 3 years. And it was
Wow.
great because I got a lot of like hands on experience, and I got to actually start cooking dishes that I had in my head and putting them on the menu and getting feedback. And it was, in terms of not just a Portuguese food or a Portuguese chef, and just in terms of like foundation of like managerial skills and things like that. He taught me a great deal, because it was such like
Wow.
a small place, that I really, and he saw how passionate I was about it, that he really gave me the opportunity to like, and responsibility to kind of grow, not just as a culinary professional or not just somebody cooking Portuguese food, but actually learn more aspects of the business as well.
Amazing. The best part about all of that is like all the Portuguese restaurants and chefs kind of like paved the way for you and helped you get to where, eventually where you're at now, which is like continuing the generations in a way.
Yeah, no,
You're like the
I had
Portuguese
never even
restaurant of our time, you know?
I had never even, really thought about it that way. But I guess, yeah, now looking back at it, just having that small influence. But actually, what we it was near my mom's house, so I ate many a times there. But having that influence and that contact with Lionel Souza at Souza's, and then with Chef Manuel Azevedo at La Salette, that was really really very influential. And then yeah, after that I just kind of I felt like I needed to kind of like expand my horizons a little bit and get some more experience. So I was in Monterey for a year, ended up in San Francisco, and then just out of just like opportunity. I always, like I said, I spoke Spanish. When I lived in San Jose, we lived in a predominantly like Hispanic area. We had amazing neighbors that would have these. When Julio Cesar Chavez used to fight his boxing, they used to have these big, huge parties, and they would like make bust out this big copper kettle and make carnitas in the front yard. And I
Yeah.
always, like I said, I always loved food. So anytime people were like cooking food, like I wanted to learn. So same thing, like I rice and beans and salsa. So um, in
Yum.
2008, when I actually lost my job in Monterey, it was kind of there was like the economic downturn, like 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
Um, the the I had taken a role that was kind of like the 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 chef at the time was kind of like stepping back to like a part-time role, and I was kind of like filling in between him and his sous chef. So basically the company went to him and was like, hey, we like can't have both of you, so you need to come back on full time, or we need to have Telmo full time. And he had a family to take care of, so he chose him having a job, which I don't begrudge him for. But it was actually
Right.
a really great thing, because I ended up at the time looking for jobs, and my girlfriend at the time sent me a Craigslist thing, and it's like, hey, this in San Francisco, this restaurant's looking for an executive chef, but they don't really require executive chef experience. It's Mexican food. And I was like, at the time I was like, yeah, but like I've never cooked Mexican food like professionally. And she was like, but you've been a sous chef and you know how to run kitchens. I was like, yeah. And she's like, and you know how to cook Mexican food. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, so put that together. So I ended up emailing them and got an interview. And from that interview, I got like a tasting. So a tasting is basically where they're like, hey, make us
Food.
food. And I cooked for them, ended up getting that job, and that ended up being my first executive chef job ever. The place is still open. It's a place on downtown San Francisco called Tropisueño. It's like a little
Oh, I
By Yerba
I
Buena
love
Park, in the
that
little
place.
in
I've
the
been
in
there
the
before.
alleyway there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
They have good cocktails and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, they had a great bar at the time when they opened. And this was in like two end of 2008. The bar manager at the time, Manuel, he was very like very advanced in terms of like cocktails, especially with like agave
Yeah.
spirits, mezcal, tequila, and stuff. And he put together a great cocktail list, and I was there. It was wild. It was my first executive chef job
That's
ever.
a fun
I was telling
restaurant.
somebody actually, huh?
That's like a fun, lively restaurant.
Oh, super fun. And it was open lunch and
Yeah.
dinner, and it was like open like 7 days a week. So it was kind of a beast. But it was my first executive chef job ever. And at the time, I lived with my girlfriend, and she was working at Pebble Beach, at the spa at Pebble Beach. And we had a lease on our place there through February. And I didn't want to like break the lease and stuff. So I was very fortunate. Actually, a great friend of mine, Tanya Gallart, who's been in the city for a long time, and actually, her and I were roommates in San Francisco while I went to culinary school. She was living here in the city, and she let me like stay with her for a few months. But literally, I would I would get up in the morning, jump on my scooter, go to the restaurant. I would be there all night. I would literally get to the house, like crash. I was like couch surfing. I would like crash, and I would wake up in the morning, shower, do the same. And I did that for 42 days in a row. I worked at least 12 hours a day for 42 days in a row. when that restaurant first opened.
Service industry people don't get enough credit. They really do
But
not.
it's also like it's also just like it was my first executive chef
Part
job
of the
ever. I was in San Francisco, so like not only was it my first executive chef job ever, but I was in San Francisco. This was like like there was really like restaurant critics out here. There was really like people that could like make or break your career.
Mm-hmm.
And and I didn't because and it was partially also to do with kind of what they wanted out of the menu and what they wanted to do. I think they wanted something not too formal. They wanted, casual and approachable. And I didn't set the world on fire with what I did there, but I did a really good job, and the reviews were pretty good, and not earth shattering, but in terms of like I was, like I really felt like, okay, like I can do this, and then from there I just kind of got another opportunity. Actually, from there I left that to do this project with this guy who was from Venezuela, but his parents were from Madeira, because there's a lot of people from Madeira in Venezuela.
Yes. Yes.
and
Yes.
he was he had a company, not in the hospitality, but he had a company who was well established, and he wanted to do like a Portuguese project, and I did that with him for a little bit, and it didn't really work out, but I had always wanted to do Portuguese, so I kind of jumped ship to do that. And that didn't work out, and ended up really being a great thing, because I ended up working for Joe, who had a Spanish restaurant in the marina, which would later go on to become Tacolicious. And when I was the chef at Tacolicious, that's what really like changed my trajectory, um, in terms of me like um, establishing myself and my name here in San Francisco and with the press, and later would open up doors that would allow me to actually make Umacasa a reality.
Yeah. What a big journey you've had. A
Yeah.
lot of
I've lived
restaurants,
I've lived multiple lifetimes, I'm telling
especially because when you are in the San Francisco environment, you're in the service industry, even after work, like it's like all the service industry people just like combine together and you're like, let's have a drink and let's talk crap about our job. So
you.
it's
Yeah,
kind of a
like
unity there, you know?
yeah, I would say I did my fair share of like going out after work or whatever and hanging out, and but I was pretty fortunate at the time, because my girlfriend and I, after kind of like our lease was done, she moved up to San Francisco, and we lived together. So like I would when I got off work, I had somebody waiting for me at home. So I
Yeah.
would, most of the time, I would go home, which was kind of, really a blessing, because
Blessing, yeah. Saved you from the
I've seen
streets.
yeah, it kept me off the streets, because man, like the industry here, especially in like the 15 years ago, like it was just different times, and people were just, now I think people realize the importance of like taking care of yourself, your mental health, your physical health, having a better work life balance. But back then was like work 12 hours, go out, shut the bar down, go to somebody's kitchen, like make like super fancy grilled cheese sandwiches, and like leave there like at 4 in the morning, and then be back at work like at 10 the next day. And it was just like, I'm
Oh,
glad that I
you
only
were
did that
probably
on.
your friend's favorite person to drink with because if you're cooking at the end of the night,
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I definitely had that on occasion, but I'm glad, because I knew people that like did that like on a regular, and it's like,
yeah.
man, that took its toll. You're
Oh,
you
for
know
sure.
you're aging 5 years every year of your existence.
So, how did umacasa land in your lap? Were you looking for a place to start it? Like, were you
Well,
ready? You were just, let's do it?
Well, here's the thing. When I was at Tacolicious, I was once again very fortunate, that I worked with somebody, Joe Hargrave, who's the owner of Tacolicious, um, and I started off with them. I was basically the sous chef at this Spanish restaurant called Loyola, and they were doing this little pop up on Thursdays at the Ferry Building Farmers Market. He had recently been to Mexico City, and he like fell in love with this like concept he had there. So he was doing tacos, and I became more and more involved, and eventually we started doing a pop up at Loyola Tacolicious Tuesdays, and that took on a life of its own. One day we just all kind of realized like, hey, we need to turn this into Tacolicious full time, and we did that. But Joe had been around the industry for a long time, and he knew a lot of people, and he was very willing to share with me, help me grow my management skills, my leadership skills. And then as Tacolicious built, opened multiple restaurants, a second, a third, a fourth, then I also got to be involved um, in the process of putting together a business plan, going out, talking to investors, having investor dinners, meetings, essentially also then dealing with like the Department of Public Health, the fire department, DBI, which
Yeah.
was Department of Building Inspections, just going through all that process. So I gained an incredible amount of knowledge through that process. And then, so I had been, doing that for about 5 years with Tacolicious. And then one day, a chef friend of mine, she just recently moved to Maine. But Liza, she had this place here. She was an incredibly talented chef, and she had opened this place called Merrigan Sub Shop, which was like by the ballpark, by where the Giants played. And I was in there one day, and I was like, "Oh man, this place is like so cool! Like, um, I'd love to like this is like a perfect space to like I'd love to like do like a pop up or something like Portuguese food." And she's like, "You should do it. You should do it here." And I was like, "Really?" And she was like, "Yeah." So this was like the first one ever was in December 2014 in December, which I later realized was basically like on the anniversary of like my dad's passing. Was
Oh,
when I
I'm
did like
sorry, I
my
didn't know your
first
dad
like pop up.
passed.
No. It was this he passed in '98, so it's been a while. But I realized that it was like on December 12th, which was just essentially the like anniversary of his. Ironically, the anniversary, coincidentally, the anniversary. I did my first
And
Portuguese pop
it's
up ever on the
10, almost
anniversary
10
of.
years.
No, well, no. It had been
Well, it was
2000. It had been
2014,
like
right?
no 2014, but '98. So it'd been like it was basically like 16 years.
But 10 years
16.
since you've done that first thing, since that December, right? Almost 10 years?
Oh, now, yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. So we're a little bit like 9 years. So
Yeah.
long story short, so she goes do it. So I go. Hey Joe, just like I'm gonna do this pop up. Like, you cool with it? He's like, yeah, do it. So, I did it. It was sold out. It was like 40 some people, and it was one of those things where I was just like, I don't know. It's like I was like, I love Tacolicious. Like, it was this company giving me a tremendous amount of opportunity, and I really enjoyed being there. But then I did this, and it was like falling in love, and I was like,
Yeah.
that literally that feeling like I did it, like I put so much planning into it and it went well. And actually the name umacasa actually came from when I was putting together the playlist for that pop-up, that very first pop, because I didn't know what to call it. I knew I wanted it to have a vibe, right? I wanted to feel a certain way because these ideas had been living in my head for like a decade. And ever since I went to culinary school, I had a notebook with all these dishes and ideas, um, and I was kind of putting together this playlist, and I was listening to Uma Casa Portuguesa, and I was like listening to like the idea of the hospitality, the Portuguese hospitality that song speaks
Yeah.
to, and that she Amalia sings about, and I was like, that's what I want it to feel like. So, but I was
Yeah.
like, Uma Casa Portuguesa, that's too cliche, right? So I just called it Uma Casa.
I love
And
it. I
actually,
love it.
the first logo ever was just this little house with a red tile roof with like Uma Casa written inside of it.
Oh my gosh, I
Um,
love it.
so I did that. I did that first pop up, and it was a success. And I was just like, in my heart, I was just like, shit, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I got to do. So I did
Yeah.
two. I did two more pop ups. I think I did another one like in February, and then like another one in April of 2000. I remember I went with I went with we went to New York, me and Joe and Mikey, who was Joe's partner, still to this day, and we were in New York, and Joe's like, and it had been sitting in my head, and Joe's like, "What's up, man? You're being weird," and I was like, "I love you, right?" He's like, "Well,
Oh
just
my gosh,
fucking say
that
it."
the beginning of a
And
breakup.
yeah, no, it really felt like that because I like sat on it for a while, like making sure it was the right decision, and it really was like literally like parallel to like ending a relationship, like like a romantic relationship, because we were tight and like I really did care about him, but it just in my heart was like, this is what he. I was like, hey Joe, like, but I'm gonna rewind when we first decided to take Tacolicious from a farmer's market concept and turn it into like a brick and mortar. um, Joe, we were in the marina and we went for a walk, and he's like, "Hey, like I'm gonna do this. Like I want you to be the chef of this." And I was like, "Okay," but I was like, "Here's what I'm gonna tell you, Joe." I was like, "I'm gonna commit to 1 year because I want to do a Portuguese restaurant. I want to do Portuguese to get this going." And 1 year turned into, and he's like, "No, I get it, I understand." He's like, "And when that time comes, I'll support you." So 1 year turned into 5, and so we go fast forward again. We're in New York, and I tell him this. He goes, "No." He's like, "I knew this was coming." He's like, "I could see it." He's like, "I could see how much work and passion and excitement that you were putting into the pop-ups." He's like, "I could see you're doing branding already." He's like, "I know." I was like, "Yeah, I learned that from you, man. I learned like if you're
Yeah.
gonna like do something, like establish an identity from the beginning." And true to his word, I think as hard as it was because we were all very close, and they've moved on and kept growing and had tremendous success. But I had like done a cookbook with Tacolicious and a bunch of other stuff, and we were all just like not just coworkers but great friends as well. I think as hard as it was, true to his word, he did help me in that process. So I basically gave him like 6 months notice.
Yeah.
I basically gave, and that was to like transition and stuff, and in turn, Joe was great. He was helped me, basically opened up his Rolodex in terms of like, hey, here's who I think you can approach about investing. I don't think these people. Here's a lawyer. Here's the steps. Here's who I like to bank with. Literally, just like boom, 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 and
I love that.
so I basically did pop ups for 2 years, just building up a buzz and building up, and also working out the concept in my head, right? So I did
Yeah.
pop ups that were like super high end, like 9 course, like fine dining, and I did pop ups which was like basically like late night, like francesinhas and bifanas and
Mhm.
everything in between, because I just wanted to see like what do people want, what are people reacting to, like like what do I like, and I kind of found something in the middle. Because I really honestly like I enjoy fine dining here and there. It's not where my heart lives at. And I understand that some people come into this industry and they really want to challenge themselves and be at that level. For
Yeah.
me, I don't really enjoy that because to me there's a certain I don't want to say it's elitist because it's not, but it's just not very approachable. And I really enjoy the fact that my restaurant, I've been able to like, because I know how much time you're here and how much work goes into it. I like that I have a restaurant that like friends and family can just show up and sit down, and I can go and sit with them and have a beer. And when you have like a super fine dining, Michelin level restaurant, like you can't do that. There's decorum and there's uh,
Yeah.
protocol, and so I always wanted to be a place because I also my goal was to share Portuguese food with as many people as possible, and especially in San Francisco since there was no Portuguese restaurant. So I wanted something that was nice, that would definitely meet the standard of like the expectations of San Francisco diners, but not be to the point where it wouldn't be approachable for the majority of the population. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, so after two years of pop ups, hitting the pavement, meeting with people, I finally found a space and the funding and everything kind of came together. And In January, early January, like January 5th of 2000, Umacasa officially opened.
That's amazing. I love it. I love this whole story because I didn't know. And that's so cool. So you opened up the restaurant and you have now this buzz. You have this
Yep.
Portuguese restaurant because before being that I was more in the music community, dance and music of the Portuguese community, I had my best friend at the time, her uncle, a very well-known famous guitarist, for a lot of these big time fadishas that would come. So we were lucky enough to be like really young, 14 to like 19 years old, being able to go, and meet all the fadishas and everything. And we would go to dinner with them afterwards. And I'm talking about like Marisa and Anamora.
Yeah.
And that's what we presented to people from Portugal, what we had a representation of in San Francisco, like a super diverse, well-known city. That's what we were representing to them Portuguese food. When they've been on tour, like all over Europe,
Yeah.
probably
And look,
can't wait to have a Portuguese meal. And so
well,
it's like it's so nice to have like a Portuguese.
you'll be happy to know that since then, Marisa has eaten at Umacasa.
Oh, yay.
So yeah, so it was kind of like low key. I couldn't really like blow it up, but she did three
Yeah.
shows here that I catered for at the Jazz Center, and her team was like, "We don't want to eat this food's so good. We don't want to eat it at like 5:30 p.m. and it's before the show, so we don't really get to enjoy it because we can't eat that much because we have to go do a show." And she was super
Yeah.
cool, and I met her and her son, and so she goes, "Hey, it's the last show is the last show of the tour. Instead of you bringing the food here, can we just like finish the show and go eat it at the restaurant?" And I was like, "Hey, look, I have to ask the Jazz Center because they're the ones that like are basically brought me on to do. But if they're cool with it, yeah." So yeah, so they after the show, like her and her band and everybody ended up, and I like couldn't really like tell anybody, and I didn't like want to blow up the spot, but it was
Yeah.
super cool like having her here, and I had
Yeah.
actually um I actually had that same night. I had done this wine dinner with this very well known a friend of mine, Sandra Silva Tavares, who's a winemaker in Portugal. So when Marisa came here that night, Sandra was here. Sandra had never met her, and they met, and they like hit it off because Marisa like loved her wines and knew of her
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
she was like what Marisa is to like Fado in Portugal, like Sandra is to like wines as
Wine.
like a female wine producer. So it was like a really cool moment, and it felt like, I mean, we've hosted the like Portuguese prime minister here, we've hosted the
Oh,
Portuguese president. This place has had some cool moments, but yeah. And we're going back to Grub Steak. Like, I get it. The owner was really nice, and I think he had a business that he knew is what was needed. And especially at that time, like San Francisco used to go off late night, and everybody leaving bars would go there. But when I was going to culinary school, man, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you like I had quite a few like 2:30 a.m. bowls of Caldverde at Grub
yeah,
Steak.
I
And
mean, that's always
whether
right.
while it wasn't like the best representation, like I was definitely like very happy to have it. And we'd be like leaving like a bar in North Beach like at 2 a.m. with like my culinary school friends. I'd be like, "Do you guys want to go eat Portuguese soup? Yeah, let's go for it."
I always used to order the ovo cavalo there. That was so good.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all we kind of had in San Francisco, and the only other, was Sousa's and stuff like that. So you really like made a huge stepping stone in that, and you're young. So it's really cool to see you doing your thing and how far you've come with the restaurant and then how much you do for the community. Even just me looking on your website, seeing all the press and the media and everything, like you are just kicking ass, man. I'm proud of you.
Um, you know, I mean, kicking ass is a relative term, right? We've been here for 7 years. We made it through the pandemic. Also, San Francisco is experiencing a moment where even for us and a lot of other businesses, it's very difficult right now. Business
Yeah.
is down, things are slower. It's kind of the natural cycle of things.
Yeah.
But in terms of to your point, yeah, I'm very proud of the things we've done here. Not just me and what I've done here. Like our staff is tremendous. I've had very little staff turnover. I have staff that have been here since 2017. Um, you know, and not this last summer, the summer before that, I took four staff members that had been here from when we opened. We went to Portugal together because I felt
What?
like they had been. I felt like they had been talking about it and kind of that they needed to experience it firsthand, and that was like a very special moment for me to be able to do that with them, and we had
Yeah.
an amazing trip, and it's allowed us to do a lot of things, to donate a lot of gift cards and dinners and a lot of different things to organizations in the community to help with fundraising. It's allowed me to do a lot of things. Especially this in 2022 in September, my wife and I, we had a son. It allowed me to, like, being a business owner is kind of a double-edged sword, but at that time it allowed me to be home, and towards the end of her pregnancy and support her, and then when we brought Rocky home, to be there and spend a lot of time with him and be around for my family. So umacasa is special in a lot of different ways. We were kind of we kind of brought back the fado to, like, the core of, like, doing fado and like a fado house style. Sousa's used to do it long time ago, and but kind of after that, fado had just become this thing of the halls, right? And
Hmm.
while it's nice, I don't think that the root of fado is on a stage with microphones singing to a room of 500 people. Like, I just don't. I think fado in a room with acoustic, with just voices, in a room with like 50, 60 people is like the heart and soul of fado. So we started doing that here, and it became a regular fixture. Thanks to David and Angela, and to Elder Carvalheira, and to Steve Swaj and Elder's brother Alcino, who really worked together as a partnership to kind of make it a regular thing here.
Yeah.
So like I said, there's just been a lot of cool moments here. The first Portuguese player ever to be drafted into the NBA, Namias Keita, he's been here.
It's dope.
You know, just a lot of cool things. I
Yeah.
think having a restaurant in San Francisco is cool. It's very difficult and challenging, but it's very cool. And then being a Portuguese restaurant in San Francisco, when people came here, like you said, I think they were happy. I think they were happy that there was representation, like you said.
I can relate with you a lot on the COVID struggles when it came to the service industry because I have my lash and brow studio, and man, 9 months not working, that was really tough. And I don't even feel like
I
I
had
fully recovered then. I just moved on.
I had 13 months without having any diners in the restaurant. It was
So,
wild. Yeah,
so
I
hard.
got
And it
very
took a
lucky. I
minute.
will say I was very fortunate that I got like a very cool private chefing gig for 6 months that helped me, like, pay my bills, where I didn't have to worry about getting an income through the restaurant, which allowed me to focus on the restaurant and just keep it going, and not like, how am I gonna, like, take care of myself. So I was very
Yeah,
blessed
and
that
me
way.
just taking care of myself for just one sole proprietor in one business, you have to also carry other people's livelihood as well. And
Yeah,
that is
rough.
a different level of stress. And you want to keep
Yeah.
them, right? Like you hope this thing eventually is going to end and that we can
Oh,
do
it's
this
it's
thing
it's not
again, you
even
know?
about. No, it wasn't even about keeping them if we reopened, it was just more like these people were like family. Like I said, I've had very little turnover. I have two people that work for me now that have gotten married here in the restaurant, that have had
No,
their
I
like
love
wedding
that.
receptions, that have had their wedding receptions here, that have had baby showers here, that have had their kids' birthdays here. So this place is just is we're a family. So for me, it was just more of like making sure that like my family, my extended family, was taken care of, because I realized that they had obligations, and that we're fortunate that some of the staff here, this was like their second job, and they had daytime jobs that they were able to work remote, and everybody was great about like, hey, okay, I don't need to work, so let's figure out who really relies on this more, and making sure that that was a focus to keep them working as much as possible. But yeah, we fortunately all worked together, and made it through that phase, and still chugging along. So but
Yeah.
yeah, now it's like you said, when I opened umacasa, it was around the same time, they opened Adega, which was a great restaurant, and they were focused on fine dining. But now there's a lot more, a lot more restaurants. This place in the valley, Debbie's Cuisine, which I've never been, but the food looks super good, and I hope to get out there. I think they're in Hilmar,
The
so I hope
Turlock.
to get out there to try it. Maybe I thought it was Hilmar,
It might be
but
Helmer.
now there's
It's like
two
it's
Baptiste,
small, right?
and they're opening another one in Gilroy. So it's now Portuguese food is so much more out there, and that was always the goal, was for, because I always, when I went to culinary school, I was just always like, why do I see like tons of French restaurants and Spanish restaurants and Italian restaurants and not Portuguese? So the goal one day would be that every city in America has a Portuguese restaurant, and not just
Your
where the communities
menu,
are.
your menu, that is a very good menu. I was like, everything on here is so good. And you have like different stuff that a lot of not of people I think would traditionally make at their home as well. I mean the desserts, like everything. I know you probably have it so well thought out, your menu. It is such a good menu.
Yeah, it was just to have like a representation of like a lot of things that people look forward to. Some original dishes, some of like things that are a little bit more unique to here. But there's like basically like two things we don't make in house. We don't make the gelato in house, and we don't make bread in house. We get bread from Acme, and we get the gelato from this place down the street, La Copa Loca. But everything else we do in house, fresh, from the pastéis nata to the rest of the desserts to all of our stocks, everything. So there's a lot of love and attention and detail that goes into what we do here. And I think at the end of the day, the quality shows, and I think my goal was always for it to never stray from that feeling of it being like truly Portuguese. Yeah, it's a little bit more contemporary. Some things are done differently, but the goal is when people eat at the end of the day to really feel like they're in a Portuguese spot.
It's
And
okay. While you're on the move, what do you feel like is the number one thing ordered from your customers or
number
guests?
one thing ordered, probably the pastéis de bacalhau, the salcod fritters.
Yeah.
Right, that's like, but surprisingly, probably like the number two and three most ordered things that not just Portuguese guests, but also, as we like to say, os americanos, which is basically like everybody. They could be like Irish, or they could be French, or
Yeah, it's
like
everybody else in Portuguese.
Hungarian. Yeah, everybody that's not Portuguese is os americanos. A lot of sardines, the grilled sardines, and
I love
the
sardines.
and polv, the octopus.
See, there's not many things I don't like. So it's just like, I love it. I know that you do the Father Nights, which, for those listening, I'm sure those are going to start up again very soon. And
Well,
you
I'm gonna give
also
you
have
the
another.
exclusive, because we haven't even started marketing it. But March 17th is going to be our next Father Night.
Cool. That'll be fun. I always
So you
do
could come for
something.
Father, and
So,
just and go to a go to a pub after.
I, for some reason, every St. Patrick's Day do something so Portuguese. It's not even funny. So
Well,
pub
right? I
night it
mean,
is
think
on
of.
St. Patrick's Day.
Sopas is basically just corned beef and cabbage over bread.
Totally. Totally. I always think that I'm like, I'm eating
If,
sopas right now. This is how it tastes.
if anybody likes boiled meat, cabbage, and potatoes as much as the Portuguese, it's the Irish.
Totally off topic, but because we're talking about sopa meat, do you feel like birria meat kind of tastes like sopas
Oh
meat?
yeah.
Okay. I'm like, am I the only one that's tasting this when I eat birria tacos?
And it's because the birria meat has like clove and allspice, sometimes a little bit of cinnamon, so it has those hard spices. So it
Yes.
has some of that flavor profile that you get in sopas. Obviously, it has the chilies, which changes the profile of it. But you know what I actually think tastes very much like sopas is the broth from beef pho.
Wow. I'll have to
So
try that
because
because I always get the chicken.
have you never had beef pho?
I feel like I want to be a little bit better when it comes to pho, but I just went so easy and no one ever told me anything else. So I just started easy and I never left it. But
Okay,
my
so
husband
get the
orders
beef
the
pho.
beef.
Even if e- even if you don't want the meat, just get it with just the broth because the broth
Oh,
itself, the way they use it, they make it with beef bones and everything, but the spices they put in it give it this very like savory, warm, comforting taste that is very reminiscent. I'm telling you, if you took like some birria meat and threw it into like a bowl
the
of
pho.
pho beef broth, you'd be like, this is
We
super.
are on to something. We have a blend here. Well, I don't want to take up too much of your more of your time because I know that you're super busy. Is
No,
there
no.
anything that you want to talk about as far as like what's coming up? I know you have the 49er thing. Are you guys doing like a Super Bowl thing?
No, it's we're not open on Sundays anymore since the pandemic and having a small child. I'm sure you can relate to the fact
Yes.
that like having a work life balance and some time because any day that we're open here, I'm subject to getting a call like I can't come in today, and then I have to come in. And I
Yeah.
think like Sundays just became so valuable to me of being able to be with my family that that's kind of decision I made, but we also it also allows us to do like Fado and special event. We do
Yeah.
have the collaboration that's going on. We have the collaboration that's going on with Rita Carvalho or Rita Oak as she goes by, and Gold Bar Whiskey, which is this super cool print of Niners players in our bar, like drinking cocktails. So we'll be doing that. Yeah, we'll be doing that up until the Super Bowl. And hopefully if they win we might do it a little bit longer. We have that going on. We're gonna do Fadu on March 17th. And then yeah, man, just I just if you haven't been here a while or you haven't been here before, come on up. We're in a great little neighborhood here at Noe Valley in San Francisco. It's very quiet and chill. There's no one way streets. There's no parking meters,
Yeah, it is very chill over there.
and it's right off of the freeway. It's off of the Cesar Chavez exit on 280. So literally, you can get off the freeway and be here in 5 minutes. Yeah, if you've never been to Umacasa or you haven't been in a while, come check it out. We're always gonna have a few new things on the menu, and I just love to keep sharing Portuguese food with San Francisco and the Bay Area at large.
Thank you for doing that. Our tummies are very happy for
Yeah,
that. We
and I think you said
actually
you didn't want to
I
talk about it.
so now you have to come back because the whole freaking time we talked about oh my god, so we have to actually get a little bit more down to the nitty gritty. But it's just so crazy
But
how
honestly, like that journey, it's not just Umakaza, right? Like that the whole
right.
journey of even me being here was a whole big journey with a lot of influences, a lot of people that have been mentors to me, that have been special to me in my life, and so I think even telling that story gives a
Yeah.
kind of an insight of kind of the journey I've been on to get here. I'm sure at some point there'll be another phase beyond Umakaza, and who knows what that'll
Yeah.
be, I think as human beings, as professionals, we keep growing and going in different directions. But yeah, so far to this point, that's it's a whole series of events that kind of led up to this. But
Yeah.
this has been a very like special chapter of my life that has allowed me to um, be in contact with a lot of other people. I mean, I've even had people that um, been here and then become curious and have gone to Portugal. Oh, one thing I do want to add is I do these super fun chef led culinary tours. They've been to the Azores this year. I'm doing two of them.
Oh, I
In the
saw
beginning of
something like
September,
that you were doing.
yeah, the week of Labor Day, I'm doing a chef led culinary tour, 10 days to the Azores, um, which is basically it's a Fayal Peak, Site in San Miguel this year. We eat a bunch of good food. I cook with some chefs. We do collaborative dinners. We visited distilleries, wineries. I've basically like nicknamed it the Milan Tour because all we do is comer y beber y pasear. And
That
then
sounds like so.
in October, I'm doing another tour. I'm super excited about. First time doing this one, which is basically to Porto and the Douro region. We're going to eat at Michelin star restaurants. We're going to go visit
Ooh.
somebody and watch them make cheese. We're going to do market tours, collaborative dinners. We're going to go up to the Douro and visit some special wineries and have meals at the wineries. A bunch of cool stuff. So, and that's in like mid to late October. So, if anybody's interested in any of those things, I'm on Instagram, Chef Telmo Faria. They can just send me a direct message or cheftelmo at gmail.com. Um, or even if somebody I get people asking me cooking advice all the time, and I always like try to try. I'm like the help, like Thanksgiving help hotline.
Well, it was really cool because we finally crossed paths at the comedy show, and didn't you help host that with Mike Rita?
Yeah, so that was a kind of another idea I had. So I have friends that um, are in the cannabis space, and they wanted to do a collaborative something, and they had this lounge that was available. And they're when we were talking about the space, and they're like, yeah, sometimes we host comedy nights. And I was like, wait, I have the guy for you. So I
Yeah.
reached out to Mike, and I was like, hey Mike, next time you're out here with the Portuguese kids, do you want to come do a comedy show at a dispensary lounge where I'm gonna make like bifanas and linguiça sandwiches? And he's like, "Oh, buddy, I'm there." So
Right?
and that
There
was
was
really
nothing
cool.
better.
That was really cool. And I think honestly, like, okay, like I'm just for sure, I'm just like gonna put the rat on the table. We come from a community that there's like a lot of like negative, like associations with like cannabis, whatever. People have preconceived notions. It's a different time. We live in a time where it's controlled and taxed and moderated and legal. We also come from a community where a lot of people were alcoholics. Nobody wants to talk about it, but
Right.
it's nobody thinks twice about having bottles of wine or Macieta or whatever at the dinner table. So it's also nice now to have a younger generation that we can do these events that are like Portuguese focused or have this Portuguese elements that are also directed at people that want to have a different experience, and this one specifically at a cannabis lounge with a craft cannabis company and a Portuguese chef and a Portuguese comedian.
No, it was the best mix ever. I hope that you guys collaborate again when he comes back, because that was a really cool thing. And it was funny, this before I let you go, it was so funny because Portuguese people in that space, like the first initial, like, hey, it was like, oh, hey, like you too, me too. Okay, cool. Because we
Yeah,
never really don't know who partakes and who doesn't. And it's funny because, what was in that room? Badishtas. Like,
well,
like
yeah,
it
well,
was all
honestly,
people.
Well, honestly,
What
I
was it?
get that it was
Yeah.
taboo and stuff for a long time, but I've got to the point where, and I know you got to go and I got to go, but I will say this: I got to the point where I'm in my life. I'm like, I'm gonna be 44 years old in March. I own my own company. I employ people. I pay taxes. I'm married. I have a child. I have responsibilities that I take care of, and what I decide to do recreationally or legally. That's my decision, and I don't want. I'm just kind of tired. I'm just kind of tired of that kind of oh, what the like the stigma around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Especially because like,
yeah.
and we might need another episode because
We
my
have to.
dad, yeah. So
Yeah,
like,
we have a lot more to talk about.
yeah, so we can talk a lot about a lot more things, but to your point, yeah, that was a great event. I hope to do it again. Like I said, I'm always trying to do events that or promote Portuguese culture, but outside of the traditional confines, because I think to take, festas or Espírito Santo or whatever, which are beautiful, and I love those.
Oh, he is off, but that's okay. He had to go. I just want to thank you guys again for listening. If you want to follow Telmo Faria, he is on Instagram. Just type in umacasa and you will find it. It's in San Francisco. Go ahead and support him and the business. And if you are curious about Portuguese food, go check it out. It's so flavorful. It's just packed with so much flavor, so much yum. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy a father night or just a regular nice lunch at Umakaza. It's a beautiful restaurant. Telmo's doing a lot for the community, and I know that we'll see him at a lot of. So, what he was finishing saying, he just wants to do more out of the box things, celebrating the Portuguese culture out of the traditional ways that we typically do. Although those traditions are, stay tried and true, there are other ways that we can all bond and get together when it comes to, spreading our culture. So that was a great show. Clearly, we are going to have another episode with Telmo. I hope you guys enjoyed meeting him, hearing his story, and how he, got to this point in his life where he has a Portuguese restaurant, his dream. You guys are not following me yet. Follow me on New Friends Pod. I'm on TikTok, YouTube. I need to do better at like posting on YouTube. YouTube, Instagram is my place. I'm on Facebook as well. I am so happy to be back recording, and I can't wait for you guys to hear the rest of the episodes with all of these future guests. It's amazing. It's wonderful. I'm so happy to be here. Welcome back to the New Friends Podcast.